The first round of the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs has come to a close, and my oh my, was there some shockers in this first round. Both first seeds in the East and West have been eliminated, or at least at the top of their divisions, as the Colorado Avalanche and the Boston Bruins both fall in 7 games. We'll go a little bit more into every series, but let's get a quick recap of round number 1. So as mentioned, we'll start on the right side here. The Boston Bruins fall in Game 7 to the Florida Panthers in a last-minute comeback. The Toronto Maple Leafs finally advance the second round, taking out their nemesis, the Tampa Bay Lightning, setting up a beautiful match in round 2 between Florida and the Toronto Maple Leafs. At the bottom side here, the Islanders fall in 6 games to the Carolina Hurricanes, and in an interesting series, the New Jersey Devils win 4-3 in Game 7, 4-0 shutout. Which was a big shocker, especially the way that the Rangers kind of loaded up their squad, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. On the left side, the Kraken taking down the defending Stanley Cup champions in Game 7, the Dallas Stars taking out the Minnesota Wild in 6 games, and then obviously Vegas Golden Knights taking out the Winnipeg Jets with a couple injuries in there, which kind of hurt the Jets, but obviously the Vegas Golden Knights are a really good team. And then Edmonton taking down the Los Angeles Kings. So we now have the Kraken versus the Stars, the Knights versus the Oilers, the Devils versus the Hurricanes, and then the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Florida Panthers. So let's start with the Florida Panthers series. What happened here? And it looked smooth sailing in the beginning. The Bruins come out, win game number 1 without Patrice Bergeron, without David Krejci, a 3-1 victory. However, in game number 2, the Florida Panthers storm back with a 6-3 victory, tying the series at 1-1, and that was looking good. You're like, okay, 1-1 in Boston. We're heading back to Florida, see if we can continue our magic there. But game 3 and 4 were not generous for the Florida Panthers, as they lose 4-2 and 6-2 to fall behind 3-1 to the Boston Bruins, which at this point everyone counted Florida out. It's over, right? You got a 66 win team, I think it was, the Boston Bruins, up 3-1. They haven't lost 3 straight games all year, and to beat them in the next 3 straight, you have to beat them twice on home ice, or well, you're on the road. Game number 5, a 4-3 overtime winner, thanks to some heroics from Matt Tkachuk, who had an unbelievable series. Game number 6 was probably the game of the playoffs. I think it was 2-2 heading into the third period, and then the teams just kept exchanging goals. Boston could have put this game away, but their goal gets called back for a hand pass. Florida ends up going on to take that with a 7-5 victory, setting up game number 7 here. And game 7 was a doozy. Florida does come out on top in overtime from an absolute snipe from the Panthers. I think it was Carter Verhaeghe, if I remember. No, it definitely was not Verhaeghe, but I'm blanking on the name, so I got to bring this up. I got to bring this up here real quick. I can't show disrespect to the shot. Who was it? Yeah, it was Verhaeghe. Okay, so Carter Verhaeghe does score the goal, but that was an absolute snipe. But Brandon Montour really had a great series, scoring the first goal for Florida and evening the game with 50 seconds left to bring it to overtime. So Boston, tough. That's all I got to say. Tough there. Tough. Statistically, let's take a look at what went wrong with the Boston Bruins here. So Tyler Bertuzzi, their leading point man, with 10 points in 7 games. But if you look at it, a -4. So 6 of those points came on the power play. So power play wise, they were great. Marchand, 10 points, -6 though. Taylor Hall was probably their best player statistically, looking at 5 goals, 8 points, and a +4. Orlov played well, but just all these minuses. Bergeron, 1 point in the 3 games he played. You need a little bit more from Patrice Bergeron. Lindholm, 0 points, but was a +2. Kind of looking to see anyone else. We got Charlie Coyle, only 2 points in the 7 games. Foligno, that's okay. Krejci, 4 points in 4 games, but -3. Pastrnak, 5 points in 7 games. You need Pastrnak to be better. I know 5 goals is a lot, but you can't have a minus player. He needs to be your top point producing player. But those are the stats for the Boston Bruins. And let's take a look at their goaltending if we can here. Goalie does not show us there. Okay, so we'll look at the goalie stats after. Oh, here we go, goalies, and then Boston Bruins. Let's see. Boom, Boston gets stats. So Ullmark played most of the games. Swayman played game number 7. That was the only game. He, of course, came in relief for Ullmark one game, but Ullmark and Swayman both not the greatest. 896, 875, 3.3 for both goalies. Did get an assist to Ullmark, but those are the stats. Let's go over to the to the Florida Panthers, where, Bobrovsky came in out of nowhere, 3-1. His numbers weren't the greatest, but he's clutch. He gets it done. Lyon played really well in 3 games, 1 and 2, but had a .902 save percentage, 3.26 goals against average. So anything above 900 against the Boston Bruins, I mean, that's pretty damn good. So let's move on to the next series here. I lied to you. Let's take a look at the stats of the Florida Panthers as the dog goes completely insane behind me. For the Florida Panthers, the heart and soul of this team, Matty Tkachuk, had a massive series. 11 points in 7 games, 5 goals, 6 helpers, a +5. And Brandon Montour also played massive. 5 goals in 7 games for the defenseman. 8 points, 23 penalty minutes. Carter Verhaeghe, 8 points, over a point per game with that huge overtime winner in Game 7. Barkov, 6 points even. But look at the plus-minus difference. That's the huge difference between these two teams here. And going down, Ekblad, 0 points, but look at that, +7. And then, of course, these players aren't getting points. Radko Gudas even got an assist. Colin White, Anthony Duclair, pretty bad for Duclair, but the rest of the team was firing on all cylinders. So even strength, it looks like Florida was just the better team. And that's what it broke down to. And at the end of the day, the Florida Panthers move on past the Boston Bruins. Let's move on to the next series here, as we had the Tampa Bay Lightning versus the Toronto Maple Leafs. This was probably the series of round number 1. Everyone wanted to see what would happen, if Toronto would advance, if Toronto would lose. They started off horrendously as they fell 7-3 to the Tampa Bay Lightning in game number 1 on home ice. Everyone was writing them off at this point, but they come back in game number 2 thanks to the captain. John Tavares puts up a hat trick and they win 7-2. And the next 2 games were massive games. Toronto ends up winning both of them 4-3 in overtime. And in these games, Toronto was down by a goal in game number 3. I think it was 3-2 for Tampa Bay. With a minute left, Ryan O'Reilly ties up the game and sends it to overtime. And then, of course, the Toronto Maple Leafs bury it in overtime to take a 2-1 series lead, as Morgan Rielly finds a shot through the point, top shelf on Vasilevsky, as he could not see anything. In game number 4, I think this is when Toronto won the series. They were down 4-1 on the road in the 3rd period to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they storm back to tie it 4-4. And then in overtime, Alex Kerfoot tips a shot from the point for Morgan Rielly, 5-hole on the power play on Vasilevsky to take a 3-1 series lead. So they were down 3 goals in the 3rd period, and they come back. That was a wild game. Game 5, Tampa Bay comes back in this was a close one. It was 3-1. Tampa Bay scored another goal, and then obviously then Toronto evened it up almost, making it 3-2. But they did what they had to do. Then they go back to home ice. Game 6 was so tight checking. Tampa Bay, they gave it all they had. They went down early from a Matthews goal, but Captain Steven Stamkos tied it up. But in overtime, John Tavares throws it on the net, and it goes off a skate and in, and Toronto advances to round number 2 for the first time in 19 years. But let's go take a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs stats, as Mitch Marner led the way with 11 points in 6 games. And out of those 11 points, only 4 of them came on the power play. So even strength was playing really well. Austin Matthews erupts for 9 points, 5 goals. Austin Matthews was definitely the best player on the ice in game number 6. He was on a mission and proved why he's one of the best players. Morgan Rielly got off to a really hot start. 8 points in 6 games, +8. Tavares, 7 points. Willie Nylander, a quiet 7 points. Ryan O'Reilly, a quiet 7 points. So look at that. 6 players over a point per game. And Matty Knives, this guy had 3 points. and all 3 of his points were on OT winners. So that's pretty boss if you ask me. Nola Chari, and they didn't get too much depth scoring, but their big guns came to play. And when you're Toronto, those big guns are always ready to go. Michael Bunting only played the 2 games. Obviously, gets suspended in game number 1 for his illegal hit to the head on Cernak. But wasn't too big of a factor. Did hit the crossbar in game number 7. Gusterson only played 1 game. They ended up winning, but a -1 in there. Luke Shen didn't do much, but a +6, which is important. Justin Hall ended up getting benched, -7. But this was a crazy series where the Toronto Maple Leafs, they came to play. They came to play, and the crazy part is you can argue that in this series, the Tampa Bay Lightning were actually the better team, which is crazy because if you look at the stats, you wouldn't think that way. But shots on goal, possession wise, Tampa Bay was playing well, and realistically, they should have won those 2 games, game 3 and 4, and they would have been up 3-1. So the playoffs, anything can happen. Leading the way for them was Anthony Cirelli and Nikita Kucherov with 6 points apiece. Kaloran 5 points, good run. Corey Perry had 5 points in the first 3 games. After that, slowed down, didn't have another point. Hagel 5 points. Braden Point played injured, but 4 points. Steven Stamkos. In order to win this series, you needed Kucherov, Stamkos, and Points to have big seasons or big series, and they just didn't, to be frank. And it kind of shows why Toronto moved on. Their big 6 was unbelievable. Well, their big 3 here in Tampa just. They were mediocre at best. Ross Colin, Mikhail Sergachev, Victor Hedman missed 1 game where they got absolutely destroyed, but otherwise he was good for them. Darren Radish, first playoff series, he was actually the one who scored the own goal by accident, hit off his foot. Felt bad for him there. Nick Paul didn't really do too much. He had the 1 goal in game number 5 to send it to a game number 6, but outside of that, nothing really. Tanner Jeannot injured. You pay a 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, all these picks, ends up playing only 3 of the 6 games, -2, misses the biggest games. So that sucks to see. And then I think a big blow was losing Eric Cernak in game number 1 with a concussion. So nothing you can do there if you're Cernak. And a dirty hit, it is what it is, but Tampa Bay ends up getting eliminated there. Moving on, we'll go through the next games a little bit quicker here. We got the Carolina Hurricanes versus the New York Islanders, and I think this one was just, it had Hurricanes written all over it. All the games were relatively close, but Carolina ends up coming on top. Game number 1, 2-1. I didn't watch this series a lot, so I can't comment on it too much, but Carolina wins game 1. Game 2 also goes to Carolina thanks to an overtime winner. Game 3, the Islanders finally stormed back. I believe Barzal had 2 goals in this game to make it 2-1, but just like that, Carolina 5-2. Islanders come back to make it 3-2, and then if the Islanders win this game, it goes to overtime, and it was a weird goal from, I believe, the side of the net where no one knew it went in except for the Carolina Hurricanes, but they end up winning that series. Sorokin had a good series for most part, but they ended up losing. Again, I didn't watch too much of the series, so I'm not going to give too much analysis, but we can take a look at the points here and see how everyone played. Aho, the most underrated player in the league, in my opinion, 7 points. Brent Burns, 5 points. Seth Jarvis, good series at him, 4. Nosen, 4. Nikas, only 3. Where is all of them? Looks like Puljujärvi, only 4. I think Puljujärvi did get hurt. Kasperi Kokonemi, 1 point. Jordan Stahl, 2 points. It's just a team effort from the Carolina Hurricanes. And the Islanders, I imagine, were led by Matt Barzal, as they always are. Matt Barzal, only 2 points. Oh, so only the 2 goals. So just not enough scoring from the New York Islanders. Where's Bo Horvat? Bo Horvat, 2 points. He was a +2, though, so we'll give him that, but only 2 points for Bo Horvat, their big addition. Pierre Engvall, big addition in the offseason. +4, only 2 points. Jean-Gabriel Pageau, only 1 assist. Normally comes up clutch. As a Sens fan, he scored 4 goals, 3 goals in games. So normally he's pretty good. Parise doesn't get anything done, but just looking at the stats here without watching too much of it, just not enough scoring. Just not enough scoring. Moving on to the final series. This was probably the most exciting series. Again, I watched half of the game, so not 100% sure, but game 1 and 2, it looked like the Rangers were going to become Stanley Cup champions. The way they were playing, 2 wins, 5-1 each way, just absolutely dominating the New Jersey Devils to take a 2-0 series lead. I thought it was over at this point. I thought they were going to win in like 5 games maybe. Game number 3, a big turnaround game. Jack Hughes gets it going as the New Jersey Devils come back to make it 2-1. uh, in the series as they win that one in overtime. And then game number 4 on the road once again, the Devils get it done 3-1. And the interesting part about the Devils is they actually changed their goaltender to, I can't get his name wrong, so let me go Game Center. We got it. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but this goalie played absolutely unbelievable for the New Jersey Devils, and probably is the reason that they end up advancing. There it is, Schmidt. I don't know anything about Schmidt, but he had a hell of a series. We gotta go into stats real quick. Career playoffs. 4-1 with a 951 138 goals against average. He was the MVP of the series, hands down, without a question in my mind. But they win that one. Let's go back up to first round, and then we'll go. So 4-0, 3-2. The Rangers come back to make sure they don't lose in 6, as they had a big game, 5-2 win. But in game number 7, New Jersey shuts it down as Trouba actually kills Timo Meier in this game. It was an unbelievably hard hit. But the Devils win 4-3 here. Looking at the stats, let's go take a look here. The New Jersey Devils. Jack Hughes did play well. He wasn't their leading point man, but Jack Hughes, first time in the playoffs, I mean, you can't really complain there. 5 points. You got Eric Holla played well at 6 points. Andre Palat, 5 points. Obviously, he's won a couple of cups, so he knows what it takes. Nico Hischier, Jasper Bratt. Where is our good old friend? Did Hughes' brother play in here? Doesn't look like it. I'd like to see him play. That'd be fun. Luke Hughes, that's his name. But kind of everything you see here, the MVP of this series was their goaltender. And then let's go take a look at the New York Rangers, where a lot of their big guns did not show up here. You had Chris Kreider, he played well, 9 points. Adam Fox, 8 points in 7 games, although 4 assists in game number 1, so take it how you will. Patrick Kane, always going to show up, 6 points. Tarasenko, only 4. Zibanejad, only 4. The big deal is Patrick Kane, only 1 goal. Zibanejad, only 1 goal. Capo Caco, only 1 goal. Artemi Panarin, 2 points in 7 games. And that's arguably your best player on the team. I mean, you can argue Kane and Fox for sure, but Panarin, arguably, one of your best players, one of your best point producers over the past couple of years, and doesn't show up. Trocheck doesn't show up. 7 games, only 1 goal. But the big one, their first overall pick from a couple of years ago, Alexis Lafreniere, 7 games, 0 points. 0 plus minus 0 penalty minutes, 9 shots, basically a shot a game, and in 14 minutes game on ice. So he needed to be just, it was like he was invisible out there essentially. But Shesterkin did play well for the Rangers. Just looking at the goal scoring outside of Chris Kreider, no one scored goals. Chris Kreider and Vladimir Tarasenko, no one else had 2 goals or more, which is insane. So moving on here to the left side of the bracket now, we got the Kraken versus the Colorado Avalanche. And this one right here was the biggest shocker for me. This was by far the biggest shocker. Seattle comes out, takes game number 1. That's fine. I'm not surprised. It doesn't, game number 1, who cares? It was on the road, so that's no taking nothing away from Seattle. Like I'm speechless when I say this. I thought Colorado was easily gonna pass Seattle in 5 games, but 3-1. Colorado comes back and wins the next 2 games. So now we're like, okay, makes sense. Colorado's coming. 6 goals, 3 goals. Nathan McKinnon's starting to wake up, and Rantanen's starting to wake up. Obviously, they don't have Landeskog anymore. Cal McCarr missed the game due to suspension. But the big story was the Seattle Kraken were now missing Jarrett McCann. And that's their 40 goal scorer, one of their best offensive players. But in game 4, it doesn't matter. They come back to win a 3-2 game in overtime, and then bounce back once again with another 3-2 game. Colorado, backs against the wall on the road. They win 4-1 in Seattle, and that sets up a game number 7 where the Seattle Kraken and Colorado Avalanche go head to head. And let me tell you right now, this game was tight checking, but the hero was Oliver Bjorkstrand, who had 2 goals. Nathan McKinnon has a goal called off, scores 1 for his squad, but the Seattle Kraken upset the Colorado Avalanche, with Philip Grubauer being the absolute X factor in these final couple games, which, if you didn't know, he was the goalie for the Colorado Avalanche a couple of years ago, so it must have felt great for him. Looking at the stats, we got the Colorado Avalanche first, and then we'll go over to the winning Seattle Kraken. We got Mikko Rantanen, 10 points. He played great. Devon Taste, 9 points. He played great. Nathan McKinnon, 7 points. He played great. Lehkonen, he played great. 6 points. Makar, he played great. 5 points. Everyone played great except. Where is Nitushkin only played 2 games. That sucks because he's one of their better offensive guys. He really rounds out that top 6. But you know, everyone. I'm saying except. I was looking for Landeskog before I got to use it. But look at the plus minus. They played great. You know, it's not that they played bad. But on the other side of the floor, the Seattle Kraken, boom. All depth scoring, all depth. Everyone is contributing. Their breakout superstar rookie, only 1 goal in the 7 games. He was playing 18 minutes. Adam Larson, Yanni Gord. Like, no one on this team was like, oh, this player had an unbelievable thing. How'd they win? They won by grit. That's how they did. They won by grit, and depth. You got Bjorkstrand had 2 points going into game number 7, scores 2 massive goals. 20 shots, just keep shooting. Jane Schwartz, he was good. Yanni Gord, obviously the Stanley Cup champion. You know what he's going to get from him. Justin Schultz played really good on the back end for them, 5 points, +1. But looking at the top players on Colorado and the top players on Seattle, you would think this was like a 4-1 blowout, 4-2 blowout. But they just stuck with it, and they got it done. The goddamn Seattle Kraken. A bunch of beauties, but that was the upset for me, and we'll move on to the next team. Moving on to the Dallas Stars versus Minnesota Wild series. This one was a nail-biter. I didn't know who I was going to go for. I ended up going for Dallas on my bracket, and it turned out to be the right one. But game number 1 was an absolute banger as the game went to double overtime before Minnesota put the game to bed. I'm blanking on who scored the winner, so I think it was Hartman. Was it Ryan Hartman? Oh, look at the memory. It's unbelievable. Ryan Hartman scored. I think it was a pretty nice goal, too, to take the 1-0 series lead over the Dallas Stars. But Dallas came right back with a 7-3 win. And it is worth noting that in this series, the Dallas Stars lost Joe Pavelski due to a concussion. And Matt Dumba, I believe, was suspended for 2 games, if I recall correctly. But let me double check that. Sorry, my bad. Matt Dumba was actually not suspended. I was thinking of a different play. But Minnesota ends up bouncing back to win 5-1, take a 2-1 series lead. And then after that, the Dallas Stars took over in a close game 4, 3-2 win, 4-0, and then 4-1 as Ottinger, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, or Ottinger, or something like that. Stole the series for the Dallas Stars, but a 4-2 series win for the Dallas Stars. I mean, not surprising. I know there was a couple weak calls on Marcus Foligno that really turned the tide, I believe, of game number 4, so could have been a completely different series there. But if we go into the stats, we'll take a look and see how everyone played. The Minnesota Wild we'll start with. And Ryan Hartman, 5 points in 5 games, +3, great from him. Zuccarello, 5 points. Nyquist, 5 points. I don't even remember when John Klingberg got traded to Minnesota, if I'm being honest, but he played pretty well, 4 points. Freddie Gaudreau, Matt Boldy, but Kaprizov was probably the big story. Only 1 goal in 6 games and a -3, 12 penalty minutes. He was on the rough side of things. 17 shots. He was putting it on target, but just not enough as he only scores the 1 goal. If they were going to win this series, you need Kaprizov to be an absolute stud. Joel Eriksson-Ek only plays 1 game as well. But the bright spot, I would say, for the Minnesota Wild was Philip Gustafsson. Acquired from the Ottawa Senators, played really well for the Minnesota Wild in the playoffs. But moving on to the Dallas Stars here, and as I said, they were without Joe Pavelski, one of their top offensive point players. But the leading scorer of the NHL playoffs, Hintz, was ready and firing on all cylinders. 12 points in 6 games, good for 2 points per game. Jason Robertson right behind him with 7 points. Tyler Seguin, 6 points with 4 goals in 6 games. Then we had Heiskanen, 6 points in 4 games. Dadonov, a little bit of depth scoring, 3 goals. Jamie Benn, 4 points. It was just a full team effort from the Dallas Stars. And there it is, Joe Pavelski, one of their top offensive guys. 1 point in 1 game, 2 penalty minutes, played 10 minutes. before unfortunately getting injured. Hopefully he's back sooner rather than later, but just a full team effort. Everyone was firing on all cylinders for your Dallas Stars. Moving on here to the Golden Knights, the second last years we're going to discuss here. And game number one looked good for the Jets. It looked fantastic. 5-1 win. Hellebuck looked good. Scheifele looked good. Blake Wheeler looked good. Josh Morrissey looked good. And then after that, it was a complete collapse. But I will say the Winnipeg dealt with a couple injuries, and most notably, they lost Josh Morrissey. And once they lost Josh Morrissey, I believe it was at the end of game number 3, I kind of knew the series was over. Game 2, Vegas dominated. Game 3 was a game that the Jets needed to win up. I believe they were up in the game. Let me just take a quick peek at that. That's the good part with the NHL website. It's so easy. Oh, they were actually down. Oh, that was the crazy comeback. Yes. Okay, now it's all coming back to me. But then they lose in double overtime. They scored 2 goals in the last 5 minutes. Okay, I was actually watching this game. I fell asleep in the overtime, but Amadio scores the game-winning goal to send Vegas with a 2-1 lead. And then game 4 and 5, Vegas kind of just did what they did and cleaned up there. But looking at the stats for that one, we'll start with the Vegas Golden Knights. Oh, look at this. St. Louis Eagles, Philadelphia Quakers, Montreal Wanderers, Montreal Maroons. Okay, let's go Winnipeg Jets. Let's stay on track here. But Neil Pionk, the defenseman, 7 points, but all kind of on the power play, -6. I mean, 7 points not bad, but it can't be the -6. Blake Wheeler played really well, 6 points in 5 games. I know him and the GM kind of got into it a little bit. The GM was very disgusted in the way they played, apparently, and Blake Wheeler didn't like the way that he said that. Adam Laurie had a good postseason. 4 goals, 1 assist, 2 power play goals. Yeah, 2 power play goals. Kyle Connor, need a little bit more from him. Pierre-Luc Dubois, 4 points. Nino Niederreiter, 4 points. But it looks like all their goals were really just on the power play. 5-on-5, they kind of got a little bit bullied out there. Nikolai Ehlers also only played 1 game. So that's going to be a big loss when you're missing one of your better offensive guys. And there it is. Yeah, Josh Morrissey, only 1 game. Was a +1, or 3 games, but was a +1 when he was playing. So maybe if Josh Morrissey's playing, that's a completely different series. Mark Scheifele only had that game 1 where he played well. After that, kind of slowed down, but only 10 shots. You need these players shooting just a little bit more. Dylan DeMello, Vladimir Nemastenkov. But let's go take a look at Vegas, who is quite dominant in this series, we'll say. So I didn't know that. I knew Mark Stone and William Karlsson were playing well, but I didn't know Chandler Stevenson had that great of a postseason so far. 8 points, 4 goals, 4 helpers in the 5 games. Mark Stone, 8 points. William Karlsson, 5 points. Jack Eichel in his first playoff run, 5 points, -2. 3 of those on the power play, so really just 2 points. 5-on-5. Pietrangelo, 5. Howden, 4. Amadio, 4, which is good. But Barbashev, Theodore, Riley Smith, I mean, 10 guys over 3 points is pretty insane. Phil, the Thrill Kessel, anyone kind of down here that we'd be surprised with? Not really. Kind of all makes sense here, but you could see the plus-minus different. Looks like Vegas was clearly a step ahead in this series. And then the final series, this is the one I watched the most of. I am going for the Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs, my second favorite team. So game number 1, Edmonton falls 4-3 in overtime, where they actually had a lead majority of the game. Actually, the entire game. The Los Angeles Kings didn't take the lead until the overtime winner, which was a broken play, but it is how it is in the playoffs. Game 2, Edmonton comes back, and to note, game number 1, McDavid had 0 points, and everyone was freaking out. Leon Draisaitl was arguably the best player in the world in this series. In the first 3 or 4 games, he was just giving it. He was going, and he was not being stopped by anyone. Game number 2, they bounce back. McDavid only gets 1 point, so everyone's still kind of a little bit on edge there. Game 3, they blow another lead and lose in overtime once again. Game 4, the tides turn this time. They come back. They were down 3-0 in game number 3, come back to win 5-4 in overtime, and then Game 5, 6-3, kind of a domination. And Game 6 was back and forth, where they were up 4-2, and then LA tied it up. I know they're up 3-1 at one point. I think it was 4-2. LA ties it up off Stuart Skinner breaking his stick and giving Philip Deneau a wide open net. And then with 3 minutes left, Kyler Yamamoto scores the game or series clinching goal to send the Edmonton Oilers off to the second round. But let's go take a look at these squads. We'll start with the LA Kings, who honestly, one player that really impressed me, his stats, they're not terrible, but was Quinton Byfield. He hasn't been that great in the NHL, but even with at a -5, I thought out there he was very efficient. He was skating hard. He was hitting. He was fast. He had hands, nice passes. Obviously, when you're going against McDavid and Draisaitl, 90% of the time you're going to be a minus player. But Kempe had a bunch of big goals, 5 goals in 6 games, 8 points, a couple snipes. Kopitar, 7 points in 6 games, but 4 of those were in game number 1. So after that, only 3 points. 3 points in the next 5 games. And then we had Arvidsson, who was a good playmaker, 7 points. Fiala came back, averaging 2 points per game. So if he was there the whole series, maybe this is a little bit different as well. Philip Deneau had the tough assignment of guarding McDavid, but had a good series himself, 5 points. Alex Afilo, Gabe Velarde, Druzy. Doughty was a marked man by the Edmonton fan base for sure. They hate him. But looking down the lineup, anyone else here? Kaliev only played the 2 games. Like to see him get in there a little bit more, but wasn't really effective in those 2 games if I'm being fully transparent there. But Kempe, that was a good run. And Fiala I was impressed with. When he came back, I'm like, damn, that guy can move the puck. But going on to our final team here, the Edmonton Oilers. Leon Draisaitl, over a goal per game. He always shows up in the playoffs. 1.83 points per game, second in the league in scoring. Connor McDavid, after a slow start, turns up 10 points, -1. A lot of power play points for him, but that's what you're going to get with Edmonton. If you take a penalty, they're going to score. And then Evan Bouchard, who's been the surprising most effective defenseman. I know 8 of the points have been power play. I know I've been harping on a lot of guys with the power play, but the way he plays is very defensive minded outside of the power play. He doesn't really go out that much. He does take a lot of shots, but he misses the net a lot. Klim Kostin, a fan favorite in Edmonton. 3 goals, 2 goals in that final game, number 6. Evander Kane, 4 points. Looking to see him produce a little bit more, especially with Zach Hyman and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who had 4 points, but we'd like to see him get on the score sheet to score a goal. Ekholm, big addition, playing well. Darnell Nurse, +4. Yamamoto's got the 1 series clinching goal. Going through, Janmark, only 1 game played, has the assist. Anyone else I want to highlight here? Oh, I want to see Bukestad. Bukestad has 2 goals in 6 games, but watching him, he's been effective out there. He's throwing the body around. He's skating hard, big body. I think he's like 6'4". He's a monster out there. But that's gonna be it. There we go. So our matchups for round number 2, and for my bracket, I had Colorado, Dallas, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Rangers, Carolina, Tampa Bay, and Florida. So who do I have here? I'm going to go Florida beats Toronto, of course. And I'm going to go New Jersey Devils upset the Carolina Hurricanes and play the Florida Panthers here. I got Edmonton over the Vegas Golden Knights. And then I have Seattle over Dallas. So those are my picks. And if we go into the league leaders, so you can kind of just see a quick overview of all the players in the league here before we end it off. Hensley in the league, Freddie Anderson, the best goaltender so far. We got Evan Bouchard most for points, so you can just take a quick look there. But that's going to do it for the round number 1 recap. After all those upsets, who do you have winning the Stanley Cup? I'm going Edmonton still. I still got them. So I'll see you next week. Have a nice day and see ya.